Hey guys, Pastor OS here. I'm here to do something a little bit different. Usually on this channel, I sort of display a method, talk about it, maybe like explain a little bit in detail as to why you'd want to do it, um, how to do it, and maybe something to make it easier. But today I'm here to talk about the Chambers of Xeric, the potential tweaks and changes, which is moving on from their idea behind reworking scouting and making it more consistent. Instead, they're gonna do what I think is the right thing, tackle why people want to scout in the first place, which is just room imbalance. It's really not fun. Um, I'm gonna quickly go through the changes, maybe discuss if I think it's good or bad, maybe what could be done a little bit better, and then give my idea as to what I think would really like solidly fill this out, and make it a really good change overall, in my opinion. So I'm just gonna quickly start running through it. And this is my second run through, so I'm really like kind of warmed up in terms of my thought process. Okay, so this general energy one where they're gonna add more energy pulse throughout the raid, I don't particularly see the use for this. In teams you're taking in one stamina, you're not using all the stamina anyway. In solos you're taking in one or two. I don't really see this being a big deal. Maybe some solo raiders will only take in one where they would take in two before, and just use these instead. Like I said, I don't particularly see the reason for this. I don't think it's particularly needed. But if it gets put in, then I don't think much would change either. So, there's not really much to say about that. These two here, which are prep and supply drops, I think they're both really, really good ideas, given some form of consistency and speed to prepping. In particular with like these growth times here, maybe makes some certain rotations more viable for people that like to go a bit faster. Um, because it isn't too bad at the moment, but it is a bit frustrating, especially with inventory and the banking management in the thing. So anything to speed that up, I think that's particularly good. This will be really well received for those that do challenge modes, because prepping is generally what you do in teams. It's mainly the solo CM like speedrunners that will take in a stack of sweets, for example, and to keep Muttadal and all that. So I think this for CMs in particular is going to be really nice. These supply drops here, I think this is just good. I think it should be more consistent. I think if you're raiding with someone, then you should be trusting them anyway. There is that, take the drops would have hopefully been getting the drops anyway, because it should be, for the whole team to use. I think it's just a good thing to be able to do that more like intuitively, a bit easier. One takes one overload, one takes the other at Muttadal, for example, or one takes each from Tecton. Just like cleans it up, makes it a bit easier. These supply drops as well, I think it's fine. The only issue I can see is if Irons drop their supplies and a main picks it up, then you're kind of screwed. But that shouldn't be an issue again. You should be raiding with people that you trust. Yes, accidents happen, but at the end of the day, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. We deal with this in TOB anyway. I really think it's sort of a non-problem. I think this is going to be really nice. Anything to sort of get up the trade screen, because it's quite a long process, especially if you have the 3-second window where you're accepting the trade and stuff like that. If this helps, then fair enough. You can drop the items and move on to prepping and stuff like that. Make it a little bit faster. I think it's really good. Moving straight onto the scavs, with like powering through this now. I think this is quite nice. Any sort of consistency. This doesn't include like the planks or the lockpicks if you're going to go after them. But this consistency is really nice. So for example, in a CM, this would mean I killed 2 scavs, and previously I have spent 2.5 minutes killing scavs trying to get the items I want. It's usually like in darkened juice or the stinkhorn mushrooms that I'm struggling on. So this is like really, really nice in that essence. The only issue here is for teams. It doesn't seem to scale at the moment. So where you were maybe getting like, 50, 60 in darkened juice in a drop before sometimes, going down to 8, yes, it might work out more consistently, but people might not like the change in that, like before they've killed one scav, got everything they need in terms of in darkened juice, and been really happy with it. So maybe like a slight scaling on that would be really nice. Other than that, I think it's pretty good. Any form of consistency for that room is really nice. Making the root plank stackable, sure, why not? I think inventory management is definitely an important thing, especially in challenge modes. Yes, this makes it a little bit easier to manage, but you're still going to have to anyway, especially with if you're doing like team raids. You take in so many switches that you're going to have to manage it anyway. Like you're still going to have to do something to get these really clean inventory swaps set up. It just might be a little different now, that's all. Speed up the mining and woodcutting shortcuts. Completely agree. I don't think there should be one shortcut in the game that towers over the others. I think you should be rewarded for having a high level in mining and woodcutting. There's really no reason why the boulder is the only shortcut that you want to take. Doesn't really make sense. You should be rewarded for training these skills, for bringing these items with you. There's really no reason for that not to be in the game. I don't really see why. This is the first kind of room focus one, and it's quite hard to talk about this because I've not done any math on it, so it's kind of hard to say. Tekton's quite a strange room in that it's very RNG dependent. Even if your RNG is on the good side for your hammers, your RNG for your hits after that might not be. Along with anvil resets and stuff like that. It can be quite a frustrating room. I've had CM Tektons, for example, that have been a minute or a minute and a half or something like that, and I've had them take over 5 minutes with a fang. Like, it happens. It's rare, but it happens. I don't think any room should have that form of inconsistency. I think it's bad by design. I think it's frustrating. I just don't like it. However, the way they're going about it and stuff like this, I'm not sure if it's good. I think the Elder Maul, it's a nice idea, but it is 5% of its current value, so that means it's diminishing returns the entire time. So even if it says 7 Elder Maul hits will lead to a defense reduction greater than a Dragon Warhammer special attack, it also means that in the next 7 hits, you're not going to get that same amount because it's diminishing every single hit. So it's kind of hard to say without the math behind it. Maybe it will be really good. I imagine it's going to be better in teams because it's everyone hitting. So I don't know. It's something for those that are like really into their spreadsheets and data to figure out more than myself. This one is kind of okay. I understand the intent behind it, not to straight up reduce Tekton's defense, but still have the requirement of a Warhammer to not like devalue the Warhammer in the raid. I understand it. It just feels a bit clunky. I think it's probably the better of these two though. Even if I do want the Elder Maul to have a buff. Even if I do want the Elder Maul to have a buff, I don't know how good this would be. But it's potentially really good. I just don't know the math, that's all. And then reducing Tekton's crush defense on his own rage form, and stopping his defense from resetting when healing at the anvil. I think they're both really good. I think this should definitely be a thing. I think Tekton's crush defense should be looked at maybe a little bit more, because he has a weakness to crush, but his defense is still so high, especially in challenge modes again. It doesn't really feel like a weakness. Like, yes, he's definitely weaker to crush than slash, stab, and all that, but it doesn't feel like it's a weakness. So maybe like hitting somewhere around there a bit more might make the room obviously more consistent, and just feel a bit nicer. You know, like I'm stabbing it with a fang currently when I do my raids, because it's just better than the crush weapons I have. And I have like a bludgeon, I have an Elder Maul, and the fact that a fang just does better than that is it's quite impressive. It's not what I would consider good design, but it's kind of a hard room without just making it an easy room to like change. My only idea for this room would be maybe making high hits deal either an even higher amount of damage. So say you hit over a 60, This would benefit like special attacks. It would benefit the Elder Maul or some other form of high hitting weapon like a God Sword. Like if you hit over a certain amount, it either chunks out defense or deals extra damage when you do that. Like say, oh, you hit over a 60, it says similar to when you stab a cow fight with the Keris and you like chink off some of the chitin or something. I think it says something like that. Maybe you like hit off a part of Tecton, and it deals extra damage or maybe reduces his defense. I think that'd be a kind of cool little thing that they could do. I don't know if it would be particularly good because again, RNG requires those large hits. But it's a thought. Okay, prevent splashing on crabs. I agree. Especially when you move into bringing in the Tumakan Shadow into the raid. Quite frustrating to have to do so many switches. Yes, it's slightly more skill expression to have to, 4 or 5-way switch before you mage. But I don't think it's particularly fun skill expression. So I completely agree on this. Remove attack delay after hitting a crab. This one's really hard. This is the kind of change where you would need to first add it to then see how you feel about it. Because it could just make the room really boring, like really, really easy. Because you don't have these weapon delays to make sure you're changing the colors correctly and that you're tagging the crabs appropriately. But maybe it just makes it feel like a more fluid room as well. So it's one of those where you'd really, really have to just give it a go, give it 10, 20 runs on all different crab rooms and see what you feel about it to like really have an idea as to if this is a good change or not. And obviously on both high and low ends, it's kind of hard to like meet in the middle. So I just think it requires a bit of testing, that's all. Moving on to Ice Demon, make kindling stackable up to a cap of 28. Again, inventory management's important in raids. This kind of devalues that in some ways. You're still going to need to invent manage a little bit, just less so. I really can't comment on this. I'm like neutral either way. I don't think it's particularly bad. I don't think it's particularly good. Yeah, that's sort of my stance on it. Ice Demon, reduced Ice Demon's magic defense. Yes, it is a horrible room. The difference between hitting hammers and not hitting hammers is incredible. And just requiring like a high level weapon to do this room somewhat efficiently is pretty horrendous. I think, I just think the magic defense is really sad. It's kind of what you expect to use versus the Ice Demon in order to hit it, and the fact it doesn't really work all that well is not great. One thing I would like to comment on this room is it's a demon, right? It's an Ice Demon. So when you're using the Arceus spellbook, there's a spell in there, like an anti-demon spell. It doesn't work versus this boss. Quite strange. I think it's the way it reduces damage that isn't, like a fire spell or something like that. I would like to see that maybe working as well to give those that don't have a twisted bow or a Tumakan Shadow a way to do the room, while not maybe bringing in a Tome of Fire and all these other like runes and stuff when you're not really using those runes for anything else, especially now that sort of Humidify works for like the Flame Wall and stuff like that. A lot of people are taking Venge or they're taking the Arceus spellbook in for Frost, especially if they solo. I think normal spellbook in the raid is pretty bad. It's only Ice Demon where it's particularly useful now. So I think adding some form of variety to what you can do to deal with it, especially with gear checks, would be really nice. Still an Ice Demon, add Herbalist secondaries to it. I really don't know. It would mean that when you're scavving in a CM, you wouldn't really have to anymore because you just kill Ice Demon, and then you move on to Shamans and then straight into prep. This also depends on what they consider a significant quantity and whether it scales in teams. I imagine in solos it's going to be more than enough for all your prep, but in teams maybe it's not going to be. No, it's really hard to say. This is really up in the air. I don't particularly like or dislike it. I'm pretty neutral to it. If it comes into the game, maybe I'll be using it. Maybe I won't be. It's really hard to say. Okay, thieving. Make rubs stackable up to kappa 28, and I'm actually going to discuss both of these at the same time. It says guarantee a minimum of 1 grub obtained on a successful chest open with the aim of speeding the room up. Grub stackable, again, inventory management, really hard to discuss. It's one of those things that you have to test. You have to talk to players at the top end and the low end, whether it's really an issue in the first place, or whether it's not. Kind of a weird number as well, because you need 30 grubs to finish the room. So I guess it's because your inventory is like a 28 item inventory, so that's why they've done that. It feels kind of strange a little bit. But this guarantee a minimum with the aim of speeding it up, or not necessarily speeding it up, but giving it more consistency. I think consistency is what the room needs. It's quite slow, especially when you're missing, especially when you're 99 thieving, and this room is, you've not got a single grub for 10, 15 chests, which I've seen happen, which I've had happen to myself. It's just like a horrendous room sometimes. Not every time. It's just a form of consistency would be really nice. I don't know whether this would be the way I would go about it. I think the way I would go about it is a form of player engagement. So, for example, if there's an animation playing on a chest showing that it has more grubs than another chest, I think you should be rewarded for noticing that and going to pick it up. Or maybe there's like a form of pathing involved. So those that, can manually path and know their pathing really well might have like a form of benefit in the room, but you're not required to do it. I think both of these ideas are better than this. You give like some form of player engagement in terms of creating the consistency yourself. Vanguards again, yes, standardizer drops. This means that you can view the room itself as this room, it gives you this, and not some like RNG best where you're like, maybe I'm not gonna get, a revite from the room, and like having to plan to get a revite in another room, which means then maybe you avoid a certain rotation. At least now we know we're gonna get 2 of them in this, so that you don't have to maybe skip a certain rotation because you've not got Vespula in the raid or something like that. I think this is really good. Again, consistency in this raid is really kind of lacking a little bit. I think this is really, really nice. This one's very, very good. And I don't mean it's very, very good in terms of it should 100% be added. I mean, like, if this gets added, it's going to be incredible. This room is already fantastic. So Vasa and Vespula, these 2 rooms are the best rooms in the raid. They are fast, they give you good points, and they give you good supplies. The current fastest rotation, like there's a few, but the current one used for world records will use the tightrope and crabs for the puzzles, and you'll have Vasa, Tecton, and Vespula in that order. And the idea behind it is that you go into Vasa with Revenge, you kill the room really fast, straight into Tecton, you have your overload for Vespula, and you get you get 4 brews, you get an enhance, you get an overload, more than enough to complete the raid, and then you rope skip, and you get fast crabs, and you're through down to Ulm, sometimes in like 5 minutes, or something like that, if you're really, really good, or maybe even less than that. What this will do is add more rotations for potential, like, for example, Vasa, Shamans, Vespula, because you're going to be getting the overload from Vasa now, and you're going to be negating the current RNG required for Tecton by getting the Shaman's room instead. So it does change the speedrunning meta a little bit. I don't know if Shaman's is going to be a consistently better room at good RNG than Tecton, but I could see it being a more consistent layout to sort of go for. You're not requiring Warhammer specs, you're not doing this and that. You can actually spec at Vasa without having to, wait for a Tecton spec and stuff like that. So you can claw the Vasa crystals. I see it being really, really good. This definitely changes a lot. I don't know whether I like the change because of that, but either way, it's going to be interesting whether it gets added or not. So anyway, we're going to move on. Adjust Vasa's defensive capabilities. And in this, we're going to be reducing the range defense of both regular and CM Vasa, and adjusting the healing mechanics so that it only heals if you don't destroy a crystal in time. I think this is nice, the adjusting the healing mechanics. I think it feels pretty bad to do like a tiny amount of damage to Vasa, because you're noodling and then you go kill the crystal and he's healed back up. It feels pretty bad. The range defense, I'm not sure if it's an issue. Yes, I sometimes have troubles hitting Vasa, but it tends to be few and far between. I think my worst Vasa in a CM is like 4 minutes 30 or something, which is pretty bad. But that's with a Bofa, I used to do it with a blowpipe and stuff like that. So it's still possible. I really can't speak for this change. It might make something interesting like Zero Crystal Vasa a possibility if blowpipe really pops off and you get that really large venge off at the beginning and stuff like that. And maybe like something weird like a Devo spec. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It could add something really interesting to the raid. But who knows. Muttadal, reduce the variance of chopping the tree, meat tree at Muttadal's. I think that's very, very good. I have a clip on my on my Twitch with Muttadals, and this isn't necessarily talking about the meat tree itself, but it's a horrendous room for RNG. You can just get absolutely demolished. Nothing you can do about it, and having that RNG of it gives you potential to be in the room longer because you're not killing the tree fast enough. So then, having more chance at getting that RNG where you're going to be screwed over is not particularly nice. I think you should have that benefit, and it should be like a consistent thing so you can, not cry one raid. I think it's nice. It doesn't have to change at all because with these next changes now, maybe freezes become more important. So again, moving straight on, we're talking about removing his damage immunity when eating from the tree. Wait a second. This includes immunity gained when frozen just before eating the tree. Okay. So this means when he's eating from the tree, you're usually like not allowed to damage him. So either when he's eating the tree or when you've frozen him just before eating the tree, he's got this damage reduction, you can't hit him. This means if you freeze him, you're not going to have to chop the tree down. And you can damage him this time, which is why you currently chop the tree down, because you can't damage him during that period of time. But it's just generally faster and more consistent to kill the tree. This might make, and this sounds really strange, and it might not really be a thing, but there's a spell in the Arceus spellbook called Undead Grasp, and it might make that kind of meta-ish at Muttadal potentially. I'm not 100% sure on like accuracy and stuff like that. But if you can just freeze with that and then kill Baby Mutter with the Tumican Shadow, which is best in slot there, and then freeze Big Mutter as well, it means you don't even have to cut the tree down. So this could potentially change the room in that aspect where you don't need an axe, so you can save that inventory slot, maybe bring something else. It's kind of interesting. I kind of like it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think I like it. I think giving people a form of expression to sort of do the room in a different way is always nice. And currently, it feels like there's one way to do it. So I think this is, for myself, this would be a good change. Okay. Moving on, Muttadals again, reduce the damage taken by players at Muttadals, and they're thinking about this in multiple different ways. They're thinking about reducing their attack speed, lowering their max hits, increasing the damage reduction offered by the correct protection prayers, and their favorite is to make the Muttadals attacks more consistent. E.g., only letting them change their attack style after a certain amount of attacks, and stuff like that. So reducing their attack speed means hard food is more capable in this room, which means purple sweets might be a little bit better. Because currently, if you're taking purple sweets in and you're tick eating, for example, big Mutter's attacks, sometimes you're just eating sweets for like 20 seconds because you can't attack because Mutter's just constantly hitting you. So this might be that more consistent, which could be kind of nice. It does mean you would obviously need less food on average, which is also kind of a bit nice, especially if you're tick eating. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the better ones. I think lowering their max hits doesn't really do that much. It means you don't have the meme of going under Big Mutter and getting hit like 118 or something like that, which is kind of sad. But it does mean that, you know, this does nothing for tick eating, for example, because your max HP is like 19 or something like that. They're not going to reduce it below that. Their current max hit in a CM is like 40 or something. I don't see them lowering it by 50%. This only really affects when you're currently chopping the tree. So say that stays in the game and you're chopping the tree, and that's the best way to do it. When Baby Mutter like ranges you and you can hit like a 50 because you're playing melee when he's right next to you. Baby Mutter can hit you at 50. It would be good for that. I could see it being really useful. Do I think it's the right direction to take the room? I'm not really sure. This is the one room where I couldn't think of a way to like change the room without it just being drastically nerfed. I think this thing where you can freeze it and still deal damage is getting there. I just don't know about reducing their max hits and the attack speed and stuff like that, if it's right. It's one of those things where you're going to have to test it and really think, you know, does this actually feel better? Or does it just feel too easy? Like, you don't want to make the raid easy, right? You just want to maybe increase the consistency and maybe add skill expression where you can. Again, for Spewler, this is the overload drop. Same as Vasa, it can make some layouts really, really good. It's really hard to say whether you should do this because it's already an incredibly good room. It's really, really hard. It's up to the player base as a whole to decide that. And Vespulo again, tweaking the mechanics without impacting the redemption method. So for those of you that don't know, the redemption method is the current meta for Vespula. It means a standard Vespula is anywhere from like 20 seconds to like 2 minutes, depending on your weapon and, you know, if it's a CM or if it's a normal. So if you're using the Tumican Shutter, which is the best, it's incredibly fast. You can get a normal Vespula down in like 20 seconds if you're lucky. It's incredible. But if you're using a Trident in a CM, you're going to quickly find out that you're going to be there for like 2 or 3 minutes sometimes. Maybe even 4 minutes. It can be a bit of a hellish room. So changing the way you do it without the redemption method could maybe help those that don't have this really, really expensive gear, or really, really rare gear if you're on an iron, and still let you do the room without feeling like you have to skip it. I just don't know if straight up nerfing the room like they're currently saying is the way to do it. I would like, instead of it just being straight up easier, I would like you to be able to control something else so you can make up for this lack of an incredible weapon. I think that's the better way to go about it. And then you can move on to redemption methods and, you know, other stuff like that. Okay, finally, the Great Orm. Add a cooldown between healing pool attacks during Orm's final phase. Absolutely, really, really annoying. Sometimes you get 4 or 5 pool attacks in a row. And when you're doing certain methods in solo, in particular, it kind of ruins your method. You're taking extra hits. It feels like it's not worth it, so you just get this elongated fight. It's a bit frustrating. I think, you know, the pools themselves are fine if you're going for one of them and stuff like that. But as soon as you start getting spammed with them, it just feels like, you know, you're spending extra time where you shouldn't be. It's not your fault. There's nothing you can really do about it. It just feels kind of bad. And limit the distance away from which a portal can spawn during special portals when soloing. a little wordy. Yeah, I struggle with that. I don't particularly like this. I think it rewards you for being like observant, from knowing what's happening, where everything's being placed, how long you have to get to it, your timing on the portal itself, or maybe if you can't reach the portal, then your timing of tick eating the portal damage. I think it's pretty good. I think there's plenty of form of skill expression currently where it is. If they do limit the distance away, I would hope it's not too much different than it currently is. Just that maybe most players can get to it if they like realize within a few seconds, instead of having to instantly be on it and sort of understanding what to do. I think if it's just close to you, I think it kind of defeats the purpose. I don't think it's particularly good in that case. And that's kind of it. So this is it for the blog post, but I would like to talk about something that I've personally thought could make this whole thing a whole lot better. And I agree with a lot here. I think the rooms need change. I think some of the ideas are great. I think some of them could maybe use a little more work, or maybe, introduce some mechanics to make it a little bit better. But the main thing I think that is a problem with this raid, besides, the bad rooms and stuff, is the way points work. And what I mean by this is the rooms pre-Ulm are pretty much what you try to skip. You go for the fastest rooms. Yes, points matter somewhat, but you go for the fastest room so you can get to Ulm, because Ulm is the most points to the raid. I don't think that's good design. I think the rooms should be more points. Excuse me. Oh, I just had to cough. Excuse me for that. I think the rooms should be the more points than Ulm. I think you should be rewarded for understanding and being able to complete these rooms to a better state, rather than being focused on 1 or 2 rotations, getting there as fast as possible, and just going at Ulm. I definitely think Ulm's the most interesting part of the whole encounter, but I think you should be rewarded for not only being able to do different rooms, but being able to like do them on the fly, doing different rotations and orders, instead of really forcing this 1 or 2 rotation narrative, which it's currently become, because it is the best way to get the amount of points per hour, which means you get more purples per hour, and stuff like that. It also means that, speedrunning isn't a bad thing. I think it's quite fun. A lot of people obviously do. It's quite competitive, especially in chambers. You see a lot of videos coming through, even now, of people breaking things as new things come out. For example, when the new rings came out, there's quite a few people that have gone for speedruns there. That would still definitely be a thing. I just think having speedrunning as the meta of getting points per hour isn't particularly good for the raid. I don't think it's particularly helpful. I think it means the average person will learn less about the raid as a whole, just based on how the points are working. And the only problem with changing it this way is obviously those that currently use the current meta won't be very happy. But one thing that you might not think about is that if you're getting more points in these pre-rooms, then if you die at Ulm, you're losing more points on average. So it can be a little bit harsher towards the newer players in a raid that's already particularly harsh when you die. Even though it doesn't look like it, it really is. So maybe something could be solved there. But that's my main thing, is that I think the rooms pre-Ulm should be your vast majority of points. Yeah, that concludes pretty much everything. Thank you for listening through this video. If you have a bit wordy on some of these things and a bit stuttery, sorry about like coughing in my voice as well. I'm not particularly great at the moment. Hopefully I helped explain my perspective on some of the changes, maybe gave you some ideas yourself. Feel free to comment, talk about this, maybe where I've gone wrong, maybe where you think would be better, or something like that. And yeah, thank you very much for listening through this. Yeah, the only thing I can do is really plug my Twitch, which is Pasta OS. Feel free to pop along. I give away all my duplicates from raids and stuff like that. It's a good time. It's nice and chill. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you around.